Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda, and I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep. We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everyone, welcome to our 20th True Crime Digest. So, if you have not heard one of these before, they are episodes filled with case updates. Sometimes we will talk about a fresh case that is recently something has happened with it. Today, though, we're just going to be talking about cases we've already covered because we've got so many updates.
We do.
We're going to be covering updates for cases including Samuel Little, Danny Rawlings, Robin Murphy, as well as the disappearance of Asha Degree and the murder of Mercedes Vega. So let's start with Samuel Little. We always do a little bit of a refresher first just to remind you what we're talking about. Samuel Little has been dubbed the most prolific serial killer in the United States. He confessed to 93 murders and 60 of his confessions, and unfortunately, not all of his confessions have been confirmed. There's plenty of serial killers who've made tons of confessions, like Henry Lee Lucas, but per the law enforcement officer who interviewed him for those 93 confessions, quote, "Nothing he has ever said has been proven to be wrong or false." Little committed murders in 29 different cities in 19 different states over the span of 50 years. Those victims, their deaths were ruled as an overdose, accidental or undetermined causes. And this is because the bodies were sometimes found quite a while later after they were significantly decomposed. It was also because many of them had what was described as, quote, high-risk lifestyles. So this could range from anything from a person being a sex worker to a person who went to bars late at night. And because their lifestyles were deemed, quote unquote, high risk, they didn't really look into their deaths much further.
I hate it because that's still happening today.
Yeah, disgusting.
So there was a new victim that was identified recently. Back in 1977, workers were clearing brush from a property in Goose Creek, South Carolina, and they found partial skeletal remains of a woman. This was just north of Charleston, and the area was just off Highway 52. The remains were unidentified, so Berkeley County coroner collected them and sent them to the MUSC Health University Medical Center to be examined. Law enforcement renewed their efforts to ID her in 2020. They uploaded her data to NamUs. They also had a sketch drawn of what they believed she may have looked like, and then they added her information to CODIS as well. The remains were sent to the University of North Texas for human identification forensic anthropology to further analyzed in 2020, and they were able to determine that the victim was between 5'2" and 5'8". She was 20 to 75 years old at the time of her death, and she was likely black.
That all is too much of a range. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
She was of average height and was an adult woman.
Exactly, yeah. Like 5'2" to 5'8".
We could say that, right? That's way better than 20 to 75. Like, 5'2" to 5'8", that's the full...
That's everyone.
I mean, not everyone, but it's a lot of people. And I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that just feels too broad. Way too broad.
It does. It does. Yeah, that's like the average height would fall between there. And then the age, like, I feel like they're just pulling numbers. They're like, well, she was adult, so here we go.
What's interesting too is sometimes when you read how people talk about this, they will shorten that age gap. I saw where some said like 35 to 65, but this age range was from like a press release from the sheriff's department, which is why I was like,
yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. So the remains were then sent back to Berkeley County that same year. Remember, that was 2020. Law enforcement began to investigate further who the victim could be. In 2022, law enforcement sent forensic evidence to Ortham in Texas so that they could build a DNA profile for the Jane Doe. As law enforcement continued to search for leads, they heard that Samuel Little had confessed to murdering a woman he met at Midway Bar and dumping her remains off of Highway 52. In October of 2024, law enforcement announced that they had identified the remains of a Jane Doe that was found in 1977 as Leola Etta Bryant. Leola was 51 years old when she went missing in March of 1974. She was last seen at Midway Bar on Reynolds Avenue in Berkeley, South Carolina. So it matched the story. Leola is the 65th confirmed victim of Samuel Little.
When we first started covering Samuel Little, it was around 60.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that over time we're getting closer to having a full range of who his victims were. As just the briefest little recap of him, I want to believe that he had a photographic memory because the way that he described, 93,
He relives it.
I couldn't tell you how I met 93 people in my life, let alone interactions or horrific things. And he seemed to revel in it, but he also drew all of the women.
He did.
So that was one of the ways that they're doing positive identification is by looking at the sketches that he drew, because the ranger that worked with him had brought him an art kit so he could do this.
Yes.
And just tuck that in your memory just for a minute or so.
And I mean, at least Leola's family has some sort of closure now. It makes me sad that this happened so long ago and there's still more that have been unidentified. And those families are growing older and older and passing away, the people that actually knew them.
Yes.
That makes me sad that they just don't get their closure for everyone. But I am happy that at least she was identified.
Yeah.
But speaking of his belongings, when Samuel Little died in 2020, he left all of his belongings to his biographer, Jillian Lauren. And just as an interesting note, she's married to the bassist of Yeager.
Yeah, it feels like a weird small world.
Yeah. Among his belongings that were left to her were his drawings of the victims and the art kit that he used to create them, clothing and shoes, hygiene items, and a TV. But also his remains.
Sigh.
Yeah. Now, Jillian has indefinitely loaned all of Little's belongings and his remains to Zach Bagans.
Another sigh.
I can't take him seriously. I can't.
I mean, we do think he's the fucking worst.
We do. I actually went on an investigation recently, and I was very pleased that others felt the same way without me having to say it first.
Yes, that's always kind of if you're a ghost investigation person and you have positive things to say about him, I don't think I'm going to love how this goes.
Exactly. No, they were all about respect, and I very much loved that.
Fantastic.
Now when I go on investigations, I'm like, we're not Bagans, right? We're going to do this, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, Jillian also has a show on Starz called Confronting a Serial Killer, which goes into her relationship with Little, which is very interesting.
Yes. I would be curious as to why she decided to give all of this to him.
He probably approached her, would be my guess. We've seen that before with other families.
Yes, I wouldn't want that in my home. Would you want anything of him? I would not. I'd be here, be disrespectful to his memory. I don't know if I would have given him the drawings of the women, because I think that victims should not be exploited in your little Vegas room. My assumption is that he is going to display the art as well as his remains. From my understanding, he's going to put Little's remains near something that he has from Charlie Manson, which may or may not be authentic.
I question a lot.
In his serial killer room, get fucked. Just get fucked.
Yeah, at least we know that these are authentic, right? Because a lot of them in his museum we question.
Yeah.
But still, don't love it.
Do not love it. So our next update has to do with Robin Murphy of the Fall River cult killings. We have a full episode on the case as well, because it's relatively complex in terms of allegations and timelines. It's called The Murders of Barbara Poza, Karen Marsden, Doreen Levesque, parentheses, Fall River Cult Killings, Bridgewater Triangle, and Satanic Panic 3. I know, it's a lot, but
a Fall Out Boy song.
It covers so many things. So Carl Drew was convicted for murdering Karen Marsden. Robin Murphy pled guilty to second-degree murder as part of a plea agreement. And as part of that plea agreement, she agreed to testify against Drew. Now, we talked about in our last True Crime Digest update that she had come out and said what I said was a lie, and that we were waiting on the results of the parole board. She has petitioned for parole several times, and she did not get it. And we loved that.
Yeah. Loved.
However.
Past tense.
Loved. However, earlier this year, in 2024, Murphy was granted parole. And per the parole board, she acknowledged that due to her pattern of dishonesty, many people have been harmed. She is willing to try and rectify the harm she has caused. Miss Murphy has significant support in the community and has presented a re-entry plan that will meet her needs. The board concludes by unanimous decision that Miss Murphy has demonstrated a level of rehabilitation that would make her release compatible with the welfare of society.
Ugh.
Yikes.
I do not like that. at all.
Nope.
And speaking of things that we do not like, we're going to move on to Danny Rawlings, aka the Gainesville Ripper. We talked about Rawlings in our episode called Scream, The True Stories, which aired in 2021. Doesn't seem that long ago that we talked about it.
Right?
Rawlings was executed in 2006 by lethal injection after he was convicted for the murders of Christina Powell, Sonia Larson, Krista Hoyt, Manuel Tobiota, and Tracy Pulse. Rawlings stabbed all of his victims, and he sexually assaulted the women that he murdered. Rawlings may be linked to another case. In 1971, David Yeager disappeared from Shreveport, Louisiana. David's family wonders if Rawlings had something to do with it, because Rawlings lived just a few blocks away from where David was last seen. Rawlings did admit that he had murdered people in Shreveport in 1989. David's family speculates that he may have started his crimes much earlier than the authorities originally believed, which, could totally make sense. He has admitted that there's some in Shreveport.
Absolutely.
I would be looking for the connection too.
Of course, it's so devastating because as time goes on, getting a true answer, you can have theories, but it's really hard to prove it, especially when the murderer is dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope they find something, though. That's sad.
So another case that we covered in a full episode was the disappearance of Asha Degree. And we haven't covered more on her since that original episode. So this is our first True Crime Digest update about her. And while we don't love everything we've learned, we're glad there's movement in the case. So as a brief recap, on February 14th of 2000, 9-year-old Asha Degree went missing from her home in Shelby, North Carolina. She was seen by drivers walking along North Carolina Highway 18 in Shelby. She was also seen being pulled into a 1970s green Lincoln, Thunderbird, or another similar vehicle of that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was never seen again. Now, fast forward a little over a year, on August 2nd of 2001, evidence belonging to Asha was located in Burke County on the side of Highway 18. Bizarrely, this is 20 miles north of where she had last been seen. A construction crew working in the area located evidence and turned it over to the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office. Numerous items of evidence were collected from the area, some having been identified as belonging to Asha, where other items were not hers. Then, in mid-September of this year, search warrants involved in the investigation into her disappearance were shared with the public. And that case recap that we just gave is actually from those search warrants. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we have learned from those search warrants and what's going on right now. Sadly, law enforcement believes that Asha was murdered, although her remains have not been located yet.
Ugh, her poor family.
I know.
I'm sure they have prepared, but still hearing it,
Yeah. DNA evidence was found on Asha's undershirt and book bag that were found in 2001. The DNA on the book bag was matched to Russell Bradley Underhill. The DNA on the undershirt was from a relative of Connie and Roy Dedman. We'll talk more about them in a moment. And just as an interesting connection, Connie and Roy Redmond operated medical facilities, and Underhill lived in at least 2 of those different facilities over the course of his life. Now, the DNA profile that matches a relative of the Dedmans was identified as being a match to their daughter, Anna Lee. She would have been just 13 when Asha disappeared.
Oh, remember how we talked about someone luring her?
Yes, we did talk about someone luring her. Based on this, law enforcement believes she would have needed her parents' help to execute/conceal the crime. And also, the Dedmans are the link between Underhill and Anna Lee. Law enforcement served warrants on Roy, Connie, and Anna Lee Dedman for DNA samples, so they took a cheek swab of each of them so they could test it against other DNA that they have yet to identify. Now, as part of the search warrants, several properties were searched. And they were pretty, the scope of the search warrant was pretty broad, but it included items like clothing, handwritten documents like diaries, electronics, vehicles, documents pertaining to Underhill or the facilities that the Redmonds operated, and possible murder weapons. And this is among a long list of items. So let's talk about what they found. When we talk about this digital evidence, I want you to just keep in mind, we're going to go through a lot of evidence that was found. I want you to keep in mind that they're looking for anything. So they're going to pull anything that falls within the scope so they can comb through it. But there are parts of this that are significantly worse than others, and you'll know when we fucking get there. So, at 621 Cherryville Road, they found an Acer laptop, an IR digital camera, a green composition book, an SD card in an envelope labeled September to November 2020, an HP laptop, white cell phones, a smartwatch in a box, paperwork from the Department of Health and Human Services, a disposable Fuji camera, a Canon digital camera, human teeth in a Ziploc bag, a Dell computer tower, an HP computer tower, many flip phones, 3 small cameras, VHS tapes that were in a camcorder bag, black Apple iPhones and other cell phones, an HP laptop, a blue notebook with assorted vehicle registrations, more VHS tapes, a Dell laptop, cassette tapes, a black notebook, financial records from 12 Oaks dating back to 2000, and then outside they found small pieces of red fabric and a small shoe sole. These were both outside the residence, and digital photos.
Interesting, because that was a while back too, so it's interesting that they would take something
24 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, I want to note, between where Asha's address was and where this particular address is about a 7-minute drive. So I know she was walking along the highway and that's where she disappeared. It wasn't very far, relatively speaking. It's 7 minutes in a car and it's about an hour and a half walk.
So moving on to the next address, at 601 Cherryville Road, they found 2 more disposable cameras, micro VHS tapes, films, LG flip phones, journals written by Lizzie Dedman and Annalie Dedman, both daughters of Connie and Roy, DSS complaint documents, transport logs, and then a green AMC Rambler. And when you look up what that car looks like, it matches the description of the one that she was pulled into.
Yes.
And then documents containing Underhill's name, a black trash bag, Carhartt jeans, children's clothing, another cell phone, and a .22 caliber rifle.
Ugh, that's scary.
I know.
And now this residence is super close to the first one too. It's a 1-minute drive or a 3-minute walk.
Yes. Then at 5106 Hawthorne Lane, they seized a Samsung tablet, a flash drive with photos, a Dell computer, a Lenovo laptop and power cord, an external hard drive, digital camera, floppy disks, assorted CDs and SD cards. And
the Hawthorne address is about 17 minutes via car from Asha's address.
The next address they searched was 7246 Walnut Wood Drive, and there they just took a BlackBerry cell phone.
That one's pretty far. That one's about an hour away from her home.
And then the last location was Northbrook Rest Home. There, they took documents pertaining to Russell Underhill's care, photographs, 2 earrings, and a gray Jaguar.
That's a lot. I'm just happy that they're, working on it.
I am too.
Yeah, I'm just happy that 24 years later, almost 25, honestly, that someone's still caring about it, which is kind of rare to see.
Yes, especially without significant press of parents begging.
I'm sure they are, but
yeah, no, I'm sure that they are. My point is that normally it has to be
in the news often,
pervasive. And yes, law enforcement believes that Asha was, quote, a victim of homicide with her body concealed. Roy Dedman's attorney confirmed that Dedman's property was one of those that was searched. From my understanding, Roy and Connie no longer live together. So his attorney had a press conference on September 13th. His name's David Teddy, by the way. And at that press conference, Teddy said, I think there will be information in that search warrant that sadly will link a person to the circumstances of Asha's disappearance that is no longer living. Not saying that the person that was named in the search warrant had anything to do with their disappearance, but it's very possible that the person who's no longer here has the answers to what happened to Asha.
Ugh.
Yeah. Teddy also noted that Dedman denied any involvement in Asha's disappearance. And so while they were conducting these searches, they weren't just looking inside for items. They were also searching the property itself using ground penetrating scanning devices. And then they also used dogs. It's not clear whether they were using cadaver dogs or search and rescue dogs, which are different things. Because again, depending on what they're expecting to find, are they expecting to find a bunker or are they expecting to find a grave?
Right.
And as a note, Underhill, who we just mentioned a moment ago, he died in 2004.
That's worrisome. If he has, I'm sure we're going to be able to find something.
Very worrisome.
But if he knows the specific details of what happened or can, answer, and the person that maybe could answer more questions isn't here, which really sucks for her family.
My theory is that they knew they were going to find some type of electronic evidence of what happened to her, which is why they are going through so much. And I'm happy that her family might get closure, but I'm horrified that there might be digital evidence of what happened to her.
That's true.
So from what we've seen, Asia's family is still holding out hope that she's alive. And we really hope that she is.
Mm-hmm.
We hope that she's able to come home. One of the things that the FBI did was they made an age progression photo of her. And I'll say, like, this is one of the most well done age progression photos I feel like I've ever seen. Normally, you're kind of like,
Yeah.
this looks like an AI person, but this looks like
her.
Just a kind person, right? Like, you can look at both photos and you're like, oh, yeah, that is what she would probably look like grown up. And I just, it hurts my heart so much because, like, imagine that's the way you see your baby grow up is in age progression photos. Like, ugh, that fucking gets me.
Yeah. The eyes get me.
The eyes are just so spot on.
Every time.
And her smile.
Yeah. Well, I hope that her family does get some information, and we'll be obviously following it still as more details come. So another case that we have a full episode on is the murder of Mercedes Vega. And that's a local case to me. That's one I still talk about. I bring up to everyone, like, do you know about this? You should know about this, because not enough people know that this happened in Arizona. So as a quick recap, Mercedes Vega was abducted from her Tempe, Arizona apartment around 9 p.m. on the evening of Sunday, April 16th, 2023. That same evening, only a few hours later, she was found deceased in an unknown car that was set on fire in Tonopah, Arizona. We have a full episode with the timeline that came out in March of this year, and it's been over a year now, and her family is still fighting to get justice. We have also updated on some of our True Crime Digest too, because we did find out some small details here and there. Unfortunately, authorities still have not released much information to her family or to the public. So the updates that we want to include is the 911 call was released. And so the 911 call was when someone saw the burning car in the early morning hours of April 17th. We have discussed it before, but just because it is released, we're hearing it a lot more played in like the news and when anyone talks about Mercedes. So again, it was a truck driver who reported seeing a car on fire, and he mentioned it was off the I-10 down in the bushes. He mentioned that he did see someone on the outside of the vehicle as well as something inside the vehicle. So what that tells us is, he saw whoever is responsible, or at least is working with the party responsible. And we still have the question of, how did he get away? He didn't disappear into the desert. There must be another car somewhere.
Yeah.
And we brought this up too. The car that she was found in was not hers. It was a Malibu. And the previous owner has been contacted by one of the news stations here. And she stated that she turned it into a Peoria car dealership in June of 2022. Now, when Lindsay and I researched the car a while back, we found that it was auctioned.
Mm-hmm.
So we did share everything that we knew with her family.
Yeah.
So hopefully law enforcement's looking into that. Now, law enforcement, since we talked about her, also looked into the DNA that was found in the garage. We talked about how we suspected she was hit over the head.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the blood and DNA was a match to Mercedes. So her mom and everyone that mentioned what they thought happened was correct. She must have been hit before she was taken.
Yeah.
Now, something that we have not brought up is that Mercedes was involved in an armed robbery a while back. And one of Mercedes' friends, who also worked at the club that she worked at, Jelena Gamboa, said that in November of 2019, one of the dancers at the club was robbed after she got home from working at the club. So it wasn't robbed at the club, but when she got home.
Mm-hmm.
Then, a little over a year later, in October of 2020, a man with a mask and gloves robbed Mercedes at gunpoint when she was on her way home from the club where she was working. The assailant took her phone and her purse, which among other things had money that she had earned that evening. He then shoved her to the ground so hard that she had scratches down her spine. That's scary. I'm just so sad that multiple horrible things happened to this poor woman.
I agree. It's heartbreaking.
It is. Jelena said, remember, she's one of Mercedes' friends. Mercedes was very, very smart. She was very strong, but she was also very mentally strong. It definitely scared her. It would scare anybody, any person that would go through something like that. But she kind of just took it, it seemed like. As you know, maybe this isn't the best environment. And I remember she stopped going in as often, kind of stayed back for a little bit. and reassessed her safety precautions. Mercedes' parents said that she was very shaken at the time and in the following weeks after the attack. 1 month after Mercedes' robbery, another dancer said that someone tried to rob her at gunpoint in the parking garage of her apartment building. Terrifying.
Yes.
However, the assailant ran off when they realized someone else was nearby in the garage. Mercedes noticed that there was activity on her Cash App account after her phone was stolen. Someone was trying to transfer money to their own account. Fucking dumbass criminals, right?
But please be dumb.
Yeah, yeah. They were able to find the suspect's account and then their vehicle information. This led them to their suspect, Cujo Young. Mercedes was able to pick her attacker out of a police lineup, and he was identified. So that's how they figured out it was for sure Cujo Young.
Mm-hmm.
Law enforcement reviewed footage from the club and found that Young had been in the club after the robberies.
Fucked up.
Which is so bizarre because, like, what if one of the girls went back to work that night? You know, like, just to be with people?
Mm-hmm.
And then this asshole's there? Anyways. Due to Mercedes' identification of him, law enforcement was able to charge him for both of the 2020 robberies. Per Jelena, the people who worked at the club were worried that there was someone else who worked at the club who was tipping off Young because they had an idea of who would have more money. Because of this, people are less open about how much money they made each night, which is, like, fair. Who the fuck would do that too? Like, ugh.
Yeah.
Young was arrested in December of 2020, but was let out on bail in December of 2021. Some articles say he may have been wearing an ankle monitor. Others say that he definitely was. 12 News in Arizona reached out to court officials to give an answer on whether he had an ankle monitor, but they said that they couldn't comment. So he might have, he might not have.
Mm-hmm.
Young's attorney withdrew from the case in May of 2023. Young was arrested in November of 2023 in relation to a massive drug sale, specifically 40,000 pills.
That's a lot of pills, and that's a big amount of pills for one person to just have.
Yes.
Sure sounds like somebody might be involved with other people doing other nefarious things.
Exactly. And what's strange is his attorney withdrew from the case a month after, in May of 2023, a month after Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wasn't arrested till months after Mercedes was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Mercedes had prepared a victim impact statement that she was going to read in Young's trial. On April 13th of 2023, Young's attorney named a man named George as a person who was expected to testify at Young's trial because, quote, he was the individual who threatened Mr. Young to commit the armed robberies. Mercedes was murdered just 4 days later. I feel like that's not a coincidence.
It doesn't feel like a coincidence, does it? Especially when you start to think that this is not just one person, probably not just two people.
Yeah.
Probably something relatively organized if we're talking 40,000 fucking pills.
For sure. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Young was not in custody, but he was wearing an ankle monitor the night that Mercedes was murdered. Per Erica, I received a call from Maricopa County Attorney's Office about a month ago asking to speak to my dead child, who had been dead for over a year, and to tell her that the man who held her at gunpoint is going to trial. I don't understand how they can fuck up with this poor family over and over and over again.
I know.
It's infuriating. Erica, I feel for her every time I talk to her. Ugh, I hate it. I hate it so much. In mid-October, Young had a hearing that Mercedes' parents, Erica and Tom, attended. Erica said, quote, in honor of my daughter, I will be there every single day in court representing her because she deserves it. Apparently, there are negotiations for a plea deal, but as of right now, his trial is scheduled for January.
And it makes me so fucking mad that that plea deal might be involved with him giving information about somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So he might not face the charges that are appropriate for what he did to her.
Yes. Yeah.
And that makes me so fucking mad, especially given that, I mean, to me,
there's just too many coincidences there.
Witness, no last name, she dies, attorney withdrawals. Like, to me, that's like, I'm not a fucking part of this. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as more comes up with anything Mercedes related, we'll bring up. But again, Erica and Tom, we've corresponded with them a few times since our last one, and
yeah,
follow them on social media. Erica's on TikTok too, talking about it, and she does little updates here and there.
Absolutely.
If you want to follow Erica on TikTok, her handle is Erica Pillsbury, so her name. And occasionally she'll give little updates as she hears them. And then a lot of the time she's just talking about Mercedes, and it's beautiful, like how much she loved her daughter, and just to follow along and try to find justice for her.
Yeah. Watching her is heartbreaking, but I think it is important to see what happens when we treat women like they aren't people.
Yeah.
Woof. So, just a couple more episodes this year. This is our last True Crime Digest. Probably won't have another one for at least a month or so into 2025. If there's any cases you'd like us to cover, feel free to send them to us. But before we go, I need to tell you something that is haunting me.
What is haunting you?
It is that the Lowe Hotel in Point Pleasant, West Virginia is for sale. It is listed as $2.3 million. We're going to include the listing in the show notes.
So we're calling on you to help us raise $2.3 million.
Oh my gosh. Like, not me, like, because Amanda and I found this out last week, and like my brain was like spinning because like I'm a business babe, you know what I mean? I've got ideas for fucking days. And that hotel, I said to Ben when we were there, I felt so incredibly drawn and pulled to it that I was just like, I felt this connection with it, which I don't know. I can't even describe it. It was the first time I'd ever been in a place that I felt like it was that haunted, and I just felt tied to it.
I remember when you were there and you were like, I wish I could have this hotel. Like I think you text me that.
Yes, I did. I was like, I would love to have this hotel and run this hotel. Like, I loved it so much. It's so beautiful, so stunning, is a full city block, has so much opportunity for coolness, you know, like the owner, her husband passed and she had run it with him. So it's a lot for, you know, it's a lot for her to do. So I feel like it's very reasonable that she would want to sell it, but it's such a cool fucking space.
Yeah.
And a hotel for $2.3 million feels honestly very cheap.
Especially when it brings a festival to your doors.
It literally brings a festival to your doors. So what I'm saying is if you would like to invest in True Crete Resorts.
Yes, we are looking for financial investors.
We are coming to you today, Sharks, for your backing on...
We've left our idea of like cow armor or whatever the fuck we were saying before.
Yeah, we've moved from cow armor to cryptid resort.
Yes. Yes.
Do you like it?
We need a lot of Patreons for this.
That is a lot of Patreons. That is a lot of Patreons. Woof.
We could have a tier though if we did, where they'd get a free weekend during Mothman Festival every year.
I mean, what a treat that would be.
That would be a tier.
Yeah, Mothman tier.
We're working on it.
You are like a
friend of Mothman. Oh no, I was thinking of like, would you be a friend to PBS and, you know, give money?
Oh yeah, friend of Mothman. Yeah, no, I mean that's fair.
Yeah, friend of Mothman. Yeah.
Reeling, just my brain, like if I sit still too long, it's like, you know what you could do? And then it just starts dreaming. And I'm like, I don't need this in my life. Like I mean, I do, but I also don't, but I also do. I don't have $2.3 million lying around, which is why I'm calling on you, Sharks, for...
Yeah, actually, honestly, we need it because last week we were supposed to record 2 episodes, but we looked at the listing for the hotel far too long and dreamed of what we would be doing with all the spaces. So
yeah, well, and also it was Liz you'll recognize Liz from our Podiversary 3, then Grinning Man, which included the Lowe Hotel story, and then their daughter Elliot's story from our Podiversary this year. So Liz left a comment being like, the hotel's for sale. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, good luck trying to keep me focused, Amanda. I'm suddenly in dream mode. I was like, we need to look at every picture in this listing.
And we did.
So
Sharks, let us know.
As I'm saying this, I'm sending this to our Discord to be like, the Mothman Hotel is for sale.
Please say Sharks.
Sharks. Dear Sharks. Please note that the Lowe Hotel in Point Pleasant, I can spell Pleasant, aka Mothman Town, is for sale.
You'll hear about it next week.
Do you want to get on the ground floor of an exciting opportunity? Cryptid aficionados? You can. with True Creeps Resorts.
And then one of us will walk out in a Mothman outfit.
Have you seen the person who's in this, like, the Mothman statue costume?
Yes, I died.
Oh, it's got the butt. It's so fucking good. The sale is pending.
No.
I'm still gonna hold out hope.
Yeah. I actually met someone from Point Pleasant recently too that I chatted with. We did a video on our TikTok about Terror Trader, and one of the owners was from there. So it was kind of fun to chit chat. So we're podcasters, travel agents,
Dreams.
hotel owners,
Hoteliers. Is that what it is?
hoteliers. Sure.
Hoteliers.
We'll do what we
Hotelologists.
hotel scientists.
Ooh, I like it. And with that, have a great weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us.
Thanks for listening. And as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon.
Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch.
Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store.
We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts.
I beg of you. I'm sorry, what?